Good evening. Can you all hear me? My name is Susan Nolan. I thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm actually feeling quite shaky and a little afraid and a little bit like I'm going to burst out crying. And here is why. I'm here this evening. I've been in Newmarket for a while, 40 years. That does not make me a native, but long enough to see what a sweet town this is, and I know we're all here because we love this town. What I want to speak about, I've seen happen at board meetings, and most especially at this What the Hell is Going On in Newmarket page. And what I want to speak about, I'm so sad at the bullying in this town. We don't want our children to be bullied in school, and yet we're bullying each other on a public way and frightening each other. I'm just so sad. Somebody said to me tonight, before I got here, you know you're putting a target on your back. And that's why I'm a little shaky, because I probably am putting a target on my back. And who am I to speak out about that? I do apologize. I'm in my work clothes. I'm a hospice chaplain. And I didn't have a chance to change after work, so I don't want this to look like a sermon, but it kind of is. So the bullying and the mob mentality that I've seen in Newmarket, it's just not who we are. I don't know how we've become this way, but I hope this is a televised meeting. I hope the people that are listening, if you can target me. I've only so many years left. I'm 72, so I guess I'm a good target. I'm an old lady. But I would really like to see us to return to civility, to be kind to one another. This year, I would see people's Facebook pages, parents of children, saying, if you can be nothing else, be kind. And then I would hear those same parents be just cruel and bullying. So forgive me if I made this into a pulpit. I didn't mean to, but I hope that somebody listens to this. Please, we can do better here. It's just very, very sad. And if we're worried about our children bullying in school, we need to realize that we're bullying in front of them other adults and board members and select people and I don't know, teachers and principals and everybody. So can we please return to Newmarket kindness? It's why we're here. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for listening. John Bridle, 27 Maple Street. I'm speaking to the board tonight because in the fall of 2020, families were asked by the school district to be partners through the pandemic like never before. They were asked to make childcare arrangements for before and after school care on Fridays and before and after school. Through working with the school, the town's recreation department was able to assist approximately 1/3 of the families who used the school facility-based childcare option the prior year. The other 2/3 of families found creative solutions that worked for them. Some grouped together and formed cohorts, some used extended family to provide care, and others made arrangements with their workplace to adjust their schedules. Many businesses chose to offer remote work opportunities for their employees to make adjustments for the school, work-life balance throughout the pandemic. Businesses are beginning to reopen and requiring families to return to the workplace. As we look at the school year 21-22, I would ask the school board to ask the superintendent to include an after-before school care option for families and that the program is housed on the school ground in the district's fall planning. The Newmarket Elementary Parent Handbook states, the Newmarket Elementary School faculty and administration believes that the total learning experience should take place in an arena of partnership with parents and community, as a school cannot function in isolation from home and community. I would say that is essential for parents as well, but the school district, being deaf to the needs of all parents, is not hearing all parents. Why does it matter that it be offered on school grounds? It's about opportunity for kids. As an elementary school does a fantastic job offering the school clubs such as jump rope drama and more. However, currently, if students were attending non-site-based care, they would miss out on the opportunity to participate in these activities. As well, in addition, the continuation of using the recreation center as an opportunity causes them to lose opportunities to offer more diverse programming. On the other end of the spectrum are those parents who work requires them to leave earlier in the morning and are home early enough to get their students off the bus. These parents have had to reorganize their work schedules, as the earliest drop-off that was available this year was 7 a.m. When the district allowed a site-based center within the school, those doors opened at 6:30. The superintendent is correct when she says families' voices were invited to participate, as there were parents on the committee. It's interesting because parents who may depend on after-school care couldn't have volunteered to participate in those meetings, as they were held Wednesday afternoons, 3:30 to 5:30, the time in which the need for childcare was there. The recent town meetings that had been scheduled for 6 p.m., a typical time for families who are beginning to have dinner. When does the superintendent offer time to discuss the plan? On the first Monday of summer vacation, a time when many families may be distracted with the new summer schedule, or the school board meeting at 5 p.m. when many families are getting off work. Has the school board considered what the financial impact to the district would be if 5% of the student population was to transfer and choose a private school option? As you know, adequacy aid, while inadequate, is $3,708.78 per child based on average daily attendance. As under state law, this aid could follow the students to their new school choice. That could mean financial loss to the school district. I know the current school board wasn't interested a few months ago in discovering the school population trends. However, it is a financial impact. And as a fiscal manager of the school district, you should be asking those tough questions. I would ask the school board to consider, if the pandemic had not come in March 2020, would this even be a discussion? The Newmarket community has a strong heritage of hard work, perseverance, and sense of community. Parents throughout the history of this town believe, and I still believe, that active participation in education leads to opportunities. And that is why I strongly support quality, affordable before and after school care being offered within the school, so that all students have access to the same opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Newmarket must demand the resignations of Susan Gibbons and members of the Newmarket School Board for their illegal, unethical, immoral, and incompetent actions. These actions have brought disgrace to the town, wasted, misappropriated many tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars, and caused personal harm to many individuals. I'm calling on every Newmarket resident to come out and protest for the resignations of these publicly appointed and elected bums who have caused so much harm. No more. The students, staff, and residents deserve public servants who will obey the laws and the rules of the state, honor their oaths of office, and act in the best interests of the public. I have recently filed new criminal allegations of extortion against Susan Gibbons, Kimberly Shelton, and others, as well as numerous other crimes. By now, most people in Newmarket know I have been telling the truth about these bums. The witnesses and other evidence are in plain sight for everyone to learn. Newmarket's town manager, Steve Fournier, deserves some of the blame for the misappropriation of Newmarket taxpayers' money on illegal fees paid by the school district, which used them to commit perjury, fraud, obstruction of justice, and now extortion. Fournier, with his knowledge of what has taken place, owed it to the taxpayers of Newmarket his oath of office and to justice to have asked questions of his fellow committee members regarding the nearly 5 long year investigation and litigation into the criminal allegations by this board. As I stated, Fournier was in the room when Al Zink informed everyone else that the search committee consisting of Al Zink, Clay Mitchell, Arlen Chafee, Craig Dion, and Kim Shelton did hold meetings on November 5th through the 8th, 2015. So why did Fournier not seek the truth? He certainly could have reached out to Zink or Shelton or any of the others, even Penny Bodeman, who helped set up these meetings, along with Patricia Ballantyne. Greg Thayer, Sean Pine, Wendy Moore, Adam Davenport, Pat Ballantyne, Penny Bodeman, many more who served on this committee, all have known the truth since day one. Newmarket is in a state of crisis. Fraud, perjury, obstruction of justice, and many other problems. And you people turn a blind eye to protect a corrupt attorney, to protect each other, and to protect former school board members from criminal prosecution. You know what was right, you know what was wrong. I want to share one last thing with you people.
So those were the 4 areas, and those
This will be
items
over in a
came
moment.
from all those groups that I talked about before.
I want you to listen carefully.
We developed the ad in the announcement in September, and started posting the vacancy in September
In case you think I'm lying,
21st
listen.
of this year. So from August through November, we received input from potential candidates. An interesting twist to this committee, which I'll talk about now, is we decided to do it a little differently, and we established a subcommittee, and that subcommittee took a leadership role in making sure that the screening committee had an adequate number of high-quality candidates. We didn't want to pass on to the screening committee 5 candidates because that's all that applied, and make the screening committee work with that. So that committee was made up of Kim Shelton, who was not a school board member at the time, Clay Mitchell, who was a professor at UNH, Craig Dion, who's a admissions officer for, and I can't remember which school, I think it's Denver, there we go. And Craig is in several hundred schools a year talking to principals, and he was our...
I'm going to pause it right there. Everybody that wants to see this, it's on the internet, on YouTube. I sent it to every single one of these people, including the current superintendent, before she ever took the job. She has allowed this to continue, this fraud to go to the Supreme Court of the state of New Hampshire, knowing the truth all along. You have done the same thing. You have violated your oath. You have disgraced yourselves personally. All you have to do is let it go. You violated the right to know law way back when. Instead of taking the truth and standing up and saying, you know what, we made a mistake. We violated the law. Instead, you chose to defame me and to lie to the courts. And now you're trying to extort $6,100 from me and my wife? That's not going to happen. Kimberly Shelton signed a document about 2 weeks ago. If I promise not to complain, if I promise not to seek any more right to know laws, the district would do the right thing and just do away with that $6,100. No problem. Did any of you vote for it? It's not in the documents anywhere. It's not in non-public session. In fact, it's not a non-public session anywhere where you people discussed, for these people to listen to, the case, the litigation, which is all belongs in 91A in non-public session, because everybody here has a right to know. But you didn't. You cheated. And every one of you swore an oath. You violated your oath, Mr. Swanson. You've repeatedly violated your oath, Ms. McKinney. Kimberly Shelton, you belong in prison for what you did. And I see the former person is right here. Ask him to stand up right here, right now, in front of these people. I dare you to come up here and say that the screening committee never met.
Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay.
I want to say one last thing, and then I'll close. Al Zink and Steve Fournier have both said that the non-public meeting minutes were never sealed. You have them right upstairs. Prove me a liar right now. Go get them. You can't do it because you lied to the court, you lied to me, and you're trying to steal money from me and my family, and I won't have it.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
just want to say that
And you're Jolene Felix, correct?
Jolene Felix of 187 Grant Road.
Thank you.
Just based on what others have spoken about, we definitely are right now a town divided. And I think the two sides are feeling it in both ways. A lot of us don't want our children to wear masks, and I think the big division comes from that point. I do hope that the division comes from our children wearing masks to school. I think that is definitely where I got involved in it, and I know that is where a lot of other parents got involved. I hope that with the recommendations that went out and the surveys that went out, the children will not be masked in the fall. We just want what's best for our kids. I know that you all work for our children, for our citizens of Newmarket. I do appreciate the time that you all put into this, and I just want it to be fair for everybody, and I want what's right for the kids. I want them to be able to breathe freely. I want it to be the parent's choice. If a parent wants their child to wear a mask, that should be up to them. If they don't want their child to wear a mask, it should be up to them. It shouldn't be up to a school board or a superintendent to make that decision for our families. And that's all I have to say. I hope that it votes in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene.
Oxon House Show 146 Ashwamp Road. I just want to pass out a petition that was conducted a couple of weeks ago. That's all I'm really going to say. I'd like you to have this because at your last meeting, I believe it was Thursday the 17th, you said there were only, or perhaps it was a couple weeks before that, you read some letters by 4 members of the community in regards to the mask and opposing the mask. And your comment was, well, that was only 4 families out of 600 families in the district. So I just want you to know that there are more than 4 people.
She said there's more than 4 people that wrote letters, and she's signing it, she's sending out a petition, showing everyone the petition of other people who signed it.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, we will close the public comment at 5:28. And with the board's permission, I would like to sort of address the matter at hand and flip things around a bit and go right into the school reopening plan. Is that okay with everyone? Sure. Perfect. Susan, if you would take the lead on that, I would appreciate it. I don't know where that feedback's coming from.
Before you tonight is the recommendation for the Safe School Opening Plan for the upcoming school year. Several weeks ago, the Commissioner of Education decided that all schools put together a Safe School Opening Plan for the upcoming year by the 23rd of June. So as has been the case before, we've established a task force made up of parents and town officials, staff, administrators, and a school board representative. We also invited students, but at this time of year, they're not necessarily able to participate in something that requires more time than they have available to them. So I'd like to first start off by thanking the parents, Carla Romano, Carl Cyril, Jen Weaselquist, town officials Steve Fournier, Amy Gajande, who is the Newmarket Recreation Department Director. We had 4 staff members, Amanda Brower, Erin Burns, Jen Farnese, and Meg Fior. Administrators Deborah Black, Erica McNeil, and school board representative Andrew Haymaker for the time that they spent working on this plan. As has been the case in the past, we spent some time putting together a survey to see what parents, staff, and students, how they felt about some of the more controversial protocols in light of the fact that vaccinations have been made available to students 12 and older, adults in the community. We also participated in one of the bi-weekly calls from Dr. Chan, who shared with us, the most current guidance from the Department of Health and Human Services. And we reviewed the universal best practices recommended by New Hampshire, as well as some of the CDC guidelines. And so the report here tonight before you, the recommendation, is based on input from our stakeholder groups. And I'm going to just highlight for you the protocols that we're recommending change for the upcoming school year. Before I get started on that, with regard to the two surveys, the first survey we sent out, we had 159 responses from staff. We have about 210 employees. Students were surveyed in grades 7 through 12, or rising 7 through 12, and we had 183 responses. Parents' responses were 444. And then last Thursday, we were informed that the Health and Human Services had changed their recommendation, suggesting now that wearing masks indoor would be something that they felt confident would be safe, regardless of vaccination. So we got that news and immediately sent out a survey to staff at the elementary level, since they're the population that have students that are unvaccinated at this point, and also parents for students 12 and under. And based on that survey, we had 99 staff members respond, and we had 319 parents respond. So pretty good response rates for those surveys, and informed our recommendation here tonight. So to begin with, we had asked, how do people feel about making masks optional? First, we asked outside when we were able to socially distance, and 96% of the staff said that they would feel comfortable, 89% of students, and 95% of parents. We then asked in our second survey how comfortable people would feel about making masks optional regardless of vaccination status inside of the buildings. And the response to that question, 88% of the staff said that they would feel comfortable, and 86% of parents, and this is the younger population of students that we surveyed, parents that we surveyed, 86% said that they would feel comfortable. We had originally asked in the first survey, prior to this new information from the state, if students, if once students were vaccinated in the schools, would people feel comfortable modifying that? And staff responded, 85% said that they would feel comfortable making masks optional once vaccinations occurred. Junior, senior high school students surveyed, 79% said yes, and 79% of parents. So pretty strong consensus around making masks optional for students in the upcoming year. Most of the surveys that we put out after the initial ones last year that were used to develop the school reopening plan, but during the year when we'd send surveys out, we weren't able to really get a consensus among stakeholders. This divide that was referred to tonight, you would see over and over again in any surveys that we'd send out, whether it was staff or parents. You would have something like 55 to 60% saying they want this, and 40% or so saying they want something else, which creates an awful lot of tension. Tension we've all felt throughout this year. So to have consensus among the stakeholders is really a positive thing. And it means people are feeling increasingly similar about where we're at this point in time in the pandemic response. So the recommendation that's put before you tonight is that masking be optional for students next year, whether indoors or outdoors. And so that's consistent with the survey results. In terms of social distancing, we would be recommending that we have a goal of at least 3 feet. Doesn't mean we'll always hit the goal, but we have a goal. This year we have a goal of 6 feet, so we'd be reducing that down to 3 feet. The students would eat in the lunchrooms this year in assigned seating approximately 3 feet apart. Certainly for social distance at 6 feet, there would be no way we could do that. But the guidance right now is for 3 feet, and so we would be changing our protocol from the current year down to 3 feet. Contact tracing remains a protocol that is being recommended strongly because if somebody does have an illness, that we do have an obligation to trace who came in contact with them. So the protocols around contact tracing would remain the same in the upcoming year. I'm just going to mention the protocols that enable us to be able to do contact tracing. So that's cohorting, not congregating in groups before and after school, limiting access to the facilities to staff, students, and contractors or essential workers, documenting attendance at all events, signing in and out of the building. So those are protocols that enable us to be able to contact trace. The changes to our protocols in this area, though, is that cohorting, where this year it's by classroom, next year would be by class or grade level, not by classroom. And we would not be using plexiglass barriers. That initially was a protocol highly recommended by all public health officials and is no longer something that they are suggesting had the type of results that they had anticipated that they would. So we will not be using plexiglass barriers in the upcoming year. And that students and staff will be allowed to leave and return for appointments and urgent matters. We'll have to develop a protocol around that because, again, we're responsible for contact tracing from the time kids arrive until they leave, which is what the protocol in the current year was about, being able to contact trace and our responsibility to do that. So that would be the change. Vaccinations, as was previously mentioned, we volunteered to be a community site for vaccinations. We've offered 4, 2 for staff members and 2 for parents and students. And we had a lot of staff take advantage of it. 68% of our staff were vaccinated on site here in our clinics. 20% of our staff reported that they received vaccinations already ahead of the time that they were made available for teachers, and 12% of staff, their status is unknown. Now this is for the current faculty and staff. Obviously some have retired. We'll have new people join us next year. In terms of the student clinics, we had 25% of students at the secondary level who participated in our clinic. 75% did not. They could have, as faculty, were able to get vaccinated elsewhere. We also learned from surveying parents that a portion of them don't feel comfortable having their children vaccinated, which is, their choice, and we need to respect that. And so 14% responded to us that they were not comfortable vaccinating their children, and another 18% said they were undecided. The staff responded, 82% said they would be comfortable providing us with a copy of their vaccination card. This helps us with contact tracing. If somebody is fully vaccinated, then they are not required to be quarantined. And so once we do the contact tracing and we know who's been in contact with a person who's infected for 10 minutes or more, then we would reach out and contact all of those people. And last year, prior to vaccination, of course, they were required to be quarantined. If we have the card, then we wouldn't have to contact them in order to have them quarantined. We would just have to focus our attention on anyone we didn't have a card for. So explaining that to staff and parents, 82% of staff said that they would feel comfortable giving that to us, which would give us a huge leg up in terms of the work that we're required to do. And 62% of parents said that they would be comfortable providing a copy of that so that we would know who we would not need to have in quarantine. We're also maintaining many of the protocols that were in place this year. For example, sanitizing and keeping our ventilation systems running 24/7, the hygiene, washing hands and keeping everything clean, high-touch areas being wiped down throughout the day. So those protocols will remain and not changing for the upcoming year. In terms of diagnostic screening and testing, we would not be doing that on site. We don't have the capacity to do that. We don't have the staffing or the wherewithal to be able to provide on-site screening and testing. So the protocol that we have in place this year would remain the same. So if somebody doesn't feel well, they would be sent to the nurse. If they have COVID symptoms, then families would contact their healthcare provider and go in and get tested or at least checked and all of that. And then they'd have a note that's provided. So the same protocol around that would be in place, but the state will not be offering testing clinics next year. So that's how that process would work. But from our protocols, it would remain the same as it is at this point in time. So a few other things to mention that are changes to our protocols or relaxing of protocols are that, as I said, students would eat in cafeterias. They'd have assigned seating, again, so they can contact trace, but they'd be able to eat together and in areas so that we know who's where and are able to maintain documentation. In terms of recess, we're really excited to be able to offer a full complement of recess activities, including using the playground. We're waiting for the guidance to be updated by CDC, and then we'll develop the protocols around how that will be implemented. Athletics, the protocols we're recommending that we follow for sports in the upcoming year would just be to follow New Hampshire Athletic Association recommendations. So whatever it is that they come up with for their protocols is what the district would follow. That was really hard for everybody this last year. We had no guidance at all. You know, we all had to come up with an opening plan without having any really very limited information. And so as the year went on, it was challenging for everybody because all of a sudden, you know, you would get guidance that says wear a mask, and then the association would say no, you don't have to, and then another group would say you have to, and it was just really, really challenging. So, you know, lessons learned over the course of the year. You know, we've tried to take into consideration, in addition to, you know, what our stakeholders are sharing with us about how they feel this year, which is different than how they felt last year. And then school buses, just, you know, obviously with masking being optional, on school buses, masking will be optional. And so parents that don't feel comfortable having their kids ride buses would, you know, continue to have the kids either walk or ride or, you know, come in with a neighbor. However children are getting to school now, they should make those choices for themselves based on what they feel their needs are. So in terms of academic needs, our plan includes and repeats much of the information we've shared before. That we have a mathematics program that we're introducing, pre-K-8 and Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry. Staff will receive extensive training on math instruction for the next 3 years, thanks to the approval of that core math program by the board a couple of weeks ago, and administrators will monitor the math implementation. Of course, there's built-in assessments associated with that so that we can monitor how students are doing. The good news is that we will have common outcomes defined, and so tracking where students are and how they're progressing in their learning will be much easier because we'll have a curriculum and a core program to evaluate against. So ELA, we have added the NEWA suite of assessments for literacy screening tools. Students will be monitored and interventions provided, and we'll use grant money to deploy support to support any instructional improvements and interventions that we see as needs arise during the school year. We'll tap into grant money for anything that we see when we get back to school. Addressing learning loss, of course, you know that we have elementary school learning loss plan. Includes summer school that's taking place this week and next week with the approval of the plan. Of course, these would be the protocols we would follow going forward. We wouldn't continue with the old protocols. These would be the ones that we implement moving forward. Summer school or learning loss for the secondary level will continue on until the end of July. Our extended year program for students with special needs will begin in July and will run the entire month of July. And we're using Title I funds to support students at the secondary level in credit recovery and course recovery. Any students that have disabilities, we're going to be offering, just a reminder, next year, we've been talking about this all year, that we're going to a more traditional, school year next year, that, kids are going to be coming here 5 days a week, your typical school day. We've been planning on that since the fall. But just so people know, we're not planning on offering remote learning next year. It's fully on-campus learning with the full complement of co-curriculars. Obviously there'll be modifications to how we do things. We still have to keep track of, who's at the games and things like that. But some of the protocols that we have in place this year would not need to be in place, including having to wear a mask at the games and such. So it should make for an easier year for parents and teachers and students as well. Social, emotional, and mental health are all something that we're all concerned about. And you don't go through an experience like this and come out unaffected. We're all affected by this. Mental health has been on the rise in the last number of years anyways, and then you throw a pandemic on top of it, and it exacerbates the situation. So we had asked parents, to share with us, and students, how do you feel that you've been impacted by COVID this year? And 25% of the students and 26% of the parents said that they had felt that they were greatly impacted by this pandemic. 41% of students and 44% of parents said that they were somewhat impacted by, this pandemic, and 34% of students and 30% of parents said that they did not feel that they were impacted significantly, that they were able to adapt. But everybody was impacted in some way or another. We've seen that all around us. And so, we've given some thought, and we haven't fully developed all of our strategies, but we have been talking about how do we support students, families, and staff in this upcoming year as we transition away from the pandemic. And in the report, I'm going to sit here and read all of it, but we've described, the different tiers. So all students will receive some support, right? Everyone will receive some support. And we're reintroducing things like advisory and SEL spaces. We're building into the schedule for at every level, a block of time every day that is devoted to SEL. And, at the elementary school, for example, there's more meeting time, advisory, universal language for rules and Choose Love, Responsive Classroom. All of these things are things that we do within the context of the regular school day for all kids. For students that are struggling, it escalates, right? So some kids respond really well and they get their needs met, and then other kids don't. And so for those kids that continue to struggle, there's additional, counseling groups and social skills groups and co-taught SEL sessions. And then for those that are struggling, and those strategies aren't effective, then individual counseling would be provided next year. Seacoast Mental Health is another component of that. So we have a whole range of different strategies and programming that we are putting into place for next year in order to address the needs of kids, whatever they may be and however they may present in the upcoming year. Another thing that I wanted to mention was, part of taking care of the whole child is making sure students are fed. And another thing that we've done, that we're doing for the community this year, is we're offering any students 18 and under who need lunch. We're providing lunches here throughout the summer months. So we've partnered with Southern New Hampshire Services, and we will provide any student who needs breakfast or lunch with food every day, and that, I believe, is going to be served out of the junior, senior high school.
And you'll send out a blast for that.
We will send out more information. And the other thing is, if vaccinations become available for our student population 12 and under, again, we will offer, if the state is still supporting vaccination clinics at a local level. If they're still doing that, then we will volunteer again to provide vaccination clinics for our families so that they can get it here. The only difference is we would want to run that out of the elementary school, because students would feel much more comfortable in an environment they're familiar in, with people that they're used to seeing, and so we would run that out of the elementary school when that time comes. We've heard that September is the target time when they're saying that those vaccines will become available, and so any families who are looking to vaccinate their children will do what we can to continue to support them here without having to go through the sign-up process. We pre-register, Patty Banfield, my assistant, pre-registers every person for the clinic in advance to make it a smooth and low anxiety experience for those that would like to access that. The last comment I would like to make is I understand the importance of before and after school programs. I was a single mother myself, so I very much understand the challenge that is, and what a hit that was. I was very upset myself when I learned that we were going to have to continue with some of the protocols that we are going to need to implement next year. We're able to dial back the big ones that seem to be controversial, but we're not able to get there all the way, at least not at the beginning of the school year. Doesn't mean forever. Doesn't mean this is the way it's going to be. It just means that this is what our plan is at this time. And I have reached out and I have advocated for parents. I wasn't aware that it was as big as it, because nobody had mentioned it to me, frankly. Nobody had mentioned it to me. And once it was mentioned to me, I did reach out to the rec department. I knew that people were doing things. I didn't really, with all the other things we were focusing our attention on, I wasn't really, focusing my attention on that. So the rec department did jump in on very short notice and try to get a program up and running. One of the challenges has been this workforce problem where people are struggling to get employees. We struggled all year. We have 6 or 7 custodial positions open that we tried to fill over and over again and couldn't get people interested in coming in. So everybody's felt that. I did have a conversation with Ray Cooper, and I have had a conversation with the rec department, Amy, and I know that they met last week and had a conversation. So I'm not sitting here turning a blind eye to something that's that important to families. I'm not at all doing that. We will figure this out. We have figured it out. We keep figuring it out. Just because we don't have all the answers right now doesn't mean we're going to give up, because that's not what we do. We continue to try, and we continue to try, and we continue to try. And we will continue to try, and we will figure this out. People are not going to, drop the ball here. We haven't dropped the ball. Hasn't been elegant. Sometimes it's been ugly, but we've been able to get it done for the most part, under really, really difficult circumstances. And I would just ask, that you be a little patient with us. We're gearing up our learning loss plans and programs, and Amy's gearing up hers, and I know that Ray's doing the best that she can right now, and we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. There's an answer here, and we will continue to look until we find it. So that's the report, that's the recommendation from a team of people tasked with putting this plan together on your behalf.
Susan, I will say first off, thank you to Andrew and the other members of the committee who got this work done very quickly. This past 18 months has been nothing that I ever could have imagined. I don't think any of us could have. And, the good thing is, and no, it hasn't been perfect, but we've had more kids in our buildings than any other district nearby. Thankfully, no one really got sick from the schools. And now we're moving into a different phase, we're able to relax some of the protocols. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that people are getting vaccinated and that this thing is leaving us, even though it's still here. So thank you for this team for doing that. Any questions from the board?
I do have several. I apologize, I've only had this for less than 30 minutes, so this is trying to synthesize it very quickly. That's my first opportunity to see this.
Has anybody else seen it?
No,
No, I just finished writing it. We had our last meeting yesterday, and we had the parent meeting last night.
We talked about conditions for reduced restrictions, and you talked about revised guidance by the CDC and DHHS. Are we going to take into consideration number of cases in town or the county?
We discussed that deeper into the report, but yes, we would be considering all of that. This, again, is written in order to be able to access federal funds. We have to have this done. So we can't give every level of detail and every procedure that we'll have in place at this time and meet that deadline. So, yes.
That's a great point, actually. So this is a good tentative initial plan, but I would like to see more specifics before we make it the plan we're going to use for fall. Is there intent to come back with us with more details in some of these areas?
Well, this would be a policy document, so with the board's approval, we would follow this as the policy, and the administration would put together the procedures to execute on that. And so the reason it's designed this way is we had many, Andrew can speak to it, but we spent many, we had conversations about making this flexible enough so that we wouldn't have to constantly be going back to a starting point, that people would be able to take a peek and know, what was going to guide our decision making. Certainly, as soon as they can update some of these, we can come up together with the procedures. Like, for example, we're not going to follow the procedures in place right now for CDC around playgrounds. They're saying that we have to hand wash them in between each use with soap and water. Well, that's crazy. We know that they're going to update them, and as soon as they do, then we'll start to put together the protocols associated with it. If there's something in particular that, is there something in particular? Because we tried to focus our attention on the issues that parents seem to be most,
And I may have
most
missed it,
focused on.
but I don't see, for me, it would be important to have thresholds to say, if the CDC or DHHS recommends limited masking, but then we see a spike, or if we see a continued decrease, that triggers something else. I don't really, maybe that's in here, I don't see it.
I mean, I think at this point, and Gary, I think we talked about this when I asked you if asked the board if they could be available for this meeting, and your concern at that point was that it was too soon to make a plan. And yes, it is more and I think I told you this that day, it is too premature. We were requested by the state to come up with a plan by tomorrow. And because anything could change between now and August 26th or whatever the first day of school is. So I think and the board can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think this is, with the information that we have right now, and Andrew, you can tell me from what you went through, with the input from the community, from changing rules from the state, and sadly, CDC hasn't even come up with their rules for the fall as of yet, so that makes it even worse. They developed the best policy that they could to then allow the district to firm it up. So I'm sure as we get closer, there are going to be updates on what specifically these things mean, I would assume.
Well, some of them we feel we felt pretty strong about. I think we have consensus among parents,
Right.
students, and staff. So if that matters to the board, then that would be great to follow suit and support the recommendation here.
Right.
We're not saying that we're going to, we're making masks optional. That is what this community is asking for. That is what everybody feels comfortable with. That is not going to change unless there's an outbreak of some sort, and then we're mandated to have to do something. That was how we felt as a task force, that this community has spoken, all members, and we want to honor that. And if CDC mandates it, or there's a local mask order that's put into place by the town council, then we will follow suit, and that would be what would be the triggering for us to make that change.
Yeah, I think the eye opener for me too, because I was looking for that trigger too, because I feel like I'm ripping off a Band-Aid. Like, at what point do I do it? What eye opener to me, what both Dr. Gibbons said and the town manager was,
Chief Warner.
thank you, mentioned, is that the difficulty with the statistics is, a lot of our behavior is being driven by what is happening in Durham with UNH students. And then also that a lot of the outbreaks were in the assisted living homes. So is it fair to use those statistics to drive this plan? And I don't think we were comfortable to make that decision that way. I think that was what it came down to, was just we didn't know how to use the statistics.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't feel comfortable voting on this as the final plan for the fall. I am more than happy to vote on it for ESSER funding as a tentative plan, and that we regroup and get more details on as it becomes available. But I mean, for instance, last year we couldn't have mental health professionals come to the building. Now, you mentioned Seacoast Mental Health Center. Are they going to be allowed in the building this year?
Yeah, I mean,
That is one of the interventions that we are supporting. Kids need to have access to different levels of support. And some of those we outsource, and some of those we provide in-house. And since we're not going to be offering remote learning and on-campus learning, then the spaces where teachers are teaching remotely, which is in our workrooms and other spaces, will now be made available. So we'll be able to accommodate some of those supports that we weren't allowed to or able to provide this year. So Seacoast Mental Health, for those students that need it, it's important for them to be able to have access to those services, and we want to be able to offer that in a safe environment, so kids are able to get the help that they need in a timely fashion.
I guess I almost feel like we need to be a little more broad in our relaxing the restrictions with caveats in there that indicate, including before school, after school care, summer use of the facility for sports or jump rope or town meetings. I mean, I feel like we're getting there, but if we just approve this as is, then through the fall, nothing's going to really change other than masks and plexiglass and removing a little bit of social distancing, and as well as certainly mental health professionals is fantastic to hear that they'll be allowed in the building, as well as leaving and coming back.
I think the biggest issue is we're still waiting for the CDC guidelines. And I anticipate a lot of those revisions to coincide with a lot of the decisions we've already made here, and then we'll also be able to build a framework around some of the things we're talking about there. With the other things, I think the other thing too we need to realize is that when the guidelines came out about the mask from HDS, it didn't say get rid of everything. It's like, if you give up something here, you also have to keep this over here as precautions. I think these are covering the major. The awesome thing about participating in this is that everyone, the teacher, the teachers, there's the town manager, the park and rec, as well as the union rep for the teachers, and then the parents. So please forgive me if I got any of those wrong, because there was a lot there. Was they all participated in this, and a lot of this was driven by the statistics from the surveys. And I know doing that helped me make the decisions as a board member, because it helped me alleviate what was the back of my mind as a parent, and really what the people I represent is driving. And that's poorly said, but
It does, but then we're not using statistics about the region and about cases, but we're going to use those statistics from surveys. So, and is that overriding the DHHS recommendations or CDC recommendations?
So
I guess I understand that we need to have something submitted, and I'm more than willing
Yeah.
to do that and happy to do that. As long as people realize it's,
go.
Yeah, no, I, just got this as well, but I did listen last night. I know you were here. But
I had user
listened
difficulty. I
to
was unable to
the
get in,
everything
unfortunately.
The whole entire time, and a lot of these questions that came up throughout the last few months were really addressed. I'm so pleased that masks are optional. Lunches in the lunchrooms, being able to be out on sports, buses, all of those things. The Link Together is painful. I took advantage of Link Together. It was a saving grace for my family. I know how important it is. I hope that as things lessen and we get some more guidance from the state of New Hampshire, that we may be able to offer something like that. I feel like that's super important. But we also have to be careful of who's in our building, who has keys to our building, and who is around. So, there's a lot of factors in that. And if there's any possible way that we can get before and after care in the elementary school, that's my first choice. Second choice would be at least somewhere in town, because it's so important. I know that we can't have it in stone right now because of the guidelines, but I feel very confident in the people on this task force that they get it, and they know that they're going to keep working at it.
I guess I'm saying, so what can we do to ensure that we're going to work towards that? In my opinion,
What is that?
I'm hoping it's a test of the emergency broadcast system.
Oh, wow.
From Manchester, okay. I'm assuming that doesn't affect us, hopefully.
Wow.
So I guess, and I hear what you're saying, absolutely. I don't want this to be non-flexible. If there is, do we need to put a word in here that says, based on the information reviewed, the following protocols are recommended for the upcoming school year? Maybe at the end of that sentence, it says something about should guidelines change or recommendations change. The task force would then meet again to discuss any further, work with me.
We said that.
Yes.
Hey, I don't even know if the task force
So,
needs to
I
meet,
mean,
but
as far as something, I agree that we should have at least some sort of disclaimer that states, the task force isn't anticipating this from September 1st through June.
well, maybe we could have an update mid-July to see where we're at.
Right, could we look at August 1st?
Or end of July, towards the end of
Something that says, okay, is there any change from the state of New Hampshire? Because I like the fact that we are following what the state of New Hampshire is following. And is there any additional guidance from the state?
the
We're all
CDC.
here, we're all smart, we know how to search for this kind of information. We talk on a regular basis every 2 weeks on these meetings, so nothing is gonna get by us. And if it would make the public or whoever feel more comfortable that we had a one-line disclaimer or something that said, on such and such date, we will revisit these guidelines to see if there's
That would
any
be
addition.
fantastic.
I am absolutely,
Susan, you just said the disclaimers in the report.
We talked about what kinds of events would trigger us to reconsider, to either get stricter or to dial back on additional. So we stated how we would consider that, I think, and I don't know, there's parents in the audience, but my sense, and I think the sense of the task force, was that parents would feel much better if there was a vote taken, that we were affirmative about our position regarding masking being optional, unless there's some kind of a mandate from outside of us that we had to follow. I think
Well, I think with
that's what
the-
they're looking for.
And I think it's
For
crucial
every
to,
one of the issues that they felt strongly about, it has been addressed here, and I think it would go a long way to see support on behalf of the board for the work that has taken place to put this before you tonight.
Well, and I think to have this point with a small addition of, you know, to be reviewed with the board at the end of July or something would,
I'm trying to think, and you guys can help me, you two, last summer, like how we handled these situations last summer.
yeah, Andrew and I weren't here,
And
so.
and that's, and I don't, and I
Dodge that
don't know,
bullet.
I think that was happening, and I don't believe that it's not gonna happen. So.
well, it doesn't hurt to add a small.
Yeah, I agree, I'm
We're
good with that.
missing one meeting.
Well, we're not even gonna get into that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
School starts when? August 26th, I think? 31st, one of those days, I'm sorry. We have a meeting on, which is supposed to be a retreat meeting on August 5th. Can we have an agenda item on that meeting to reassess where we are at that point for these updates? Does that suffice?
If it's a retreat, is it a public?
It'll be posted.
Okay, awesome.
And if we needed to move around that and have a 15-minute meeting to talk about it or whatever it is that week, I think we can all
That's
make
fantastic.
ourselves amenable for it, but why don't we do that?
That's great.
I think
Appreciate
that's a
that.
great idea.
Okay, so I seek a motion to approve the.
Oh, wait, can I say real
Yes.
quick here? I'm sorry, with the
Oh,
before.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbons, so much for addressing the before and after school care. I just want to speak to the public that everyone on the board is aware of the issue. And I am someone that desperately needs that before and after school care. I know as a parent how much I want things black and white going into the summer so I don't have to worry about it. I will say though that just based on conversations, and I'm not in the, I can't, it's not my job to talk about it, but I'm not panicking as a parent. I just want people to know that I'm not panicking as a parent. So, and everyone's aware of it on this board. So.
And that's a lot for you not to be like.
Heather, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
Did you have some questions or thoughts?
So the cohorting would be by grade level. Any thoughts as far as kids moving from classroom to classroom? Is that all pretty much going to be the way it has been before? I know most of the grades are all kind of segregated as it is based upon wings in the school. So we'll be seeing a lot more of the kids being able to move around, but yet stay mostly within their grade level. Beautiful. Really surprised, I think it's amazing that we have almost 88% of our staff that are vaccinated. I mean, that's just amazing, so that's awesome. No,
Any other questions?
Can I ask real quick? I should have asked it during the test for me. The arrival and dismissal times, is that based on the buses, do you think, or is that when you think parents will start dropping kids off?
We just put those in as just a
Okay.
placeholder. We have added an additional bus
Okay.
this year, and so the bus routes and parent interest in using the buses will determine how long those will take, how long, and influence our arrival and dismissal time. So I mentioned to parents last night that I would send out a survey once we get a little closer to the opening of school to see if we can find out how many students plan on riding the buses and then I can give that information to the bus company, and we'll tighten that up. The
Okay.
principals told me that it would be within 15 minutes of the times that are here.
Oh,
So-
awesome. That's-
So I felt, if it's
Okay.
within 15 minutes, it's not going to be a huge departure one way or another, but at least it gives people a sense of what the range
Yeah,
we're thinking for next year would be. And when you look at it for the elementary school, it's important that you have some kind of before and after school care, because if we're not starting until 8:45 and you got to be to work at 7, there's got to be something that fills the gap. Totally understand. We'll focus some attention on that as soon as we can get through.
and it's a town issue. It's not,
It is, but I don't
Yeah.
have a problem advocating on behalf of the parents of this
Yes.
community, and I have.
Yeah.
And will continue to do so.
Any other thoughts or comments?
May I suggest we move the vote up from that?
I was just going to suggest that. So Gary, I will take that suggestion if the board will allow it, and we will proceed. I seek a motion to approve the SAU 13 Safe School Opening Plan for the I'm saying the wrong thing, 21-22 school year.
So
Make a
moved.
motion? 21.
21-22.
Oh.
Oh, I apologize. I
Didn't catch that.
misspoke.
Let's hope not.
Nope. Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Swanson, a second from Ms. Durant. Any further discussion? We'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approving the plan say aye.
Aye.
It's approved unanimously. Okay, moving right along. I wanted to just say something very quickly before we proceed. And I wanted to first thank Vice Chair Heather Durant for stepping in for me for the last 2 meetings. She ably led 2 very challenging meetings as I began my recovery from the spine surgery that I had on June 3rd. At the last meeting on June 17th, Gary Swanson requested that an item that was not listed on the agenda be discussed and ask a question regarding why on June 4th we chose to pivot on the outside mask requirements and to get air conditioners and fans in the buildings. And I wanted to answer that question this evening. As I spent time in bed icing my back on the 4th and trying to recover, I noted that the temperatures at the beginning of the week of June 7th were going to be unseasonably warm. Along with that, we had received countless emails from citizens requesting that masks become optional for, at the very least, outdoors. With all of this data, I reached out to Superintendent Gibbons and suggested that we consider revising the mask requirements. I knew that time was of the essence, as action had to be taken over the weekend so that the facilities could be prepared for school on Monday, and that we could communicate to all the stakeholders. As I knew that this would be a change to the MOAs that we have with staff and the understandings that we have with families, I agreed with Susan's suggestion to reach out to the staff and to families. In a desire for communication and transparency with my fellow board members, and because I knew that this item had been discussed at the meeting the night before, I shared my desires for staff and students with each of them. I should not have done that. I should have addressed the issue as we have in the past and should have worked with Susan and Heather alone, as we are authorized to negotiate on the board's behalf with the unions, and made the board aware of the changes to the MOA in a non-meeting and allowed them to vote in a public meeting. Both of those things happened on June 17th. It is my sincere desire to have a good working relationship with the board members individually and collectively, and with Susan. This desire encouraged me, as always, to do what I believe was best for the students and staff and to act in good faith and trust, and with the assumption of those in return from each of my fellow board members. I ask for your patience and understanding while I continue to recover, and I might have to stand up every now and then to relieve pressure on my back. Thank you. Moving on, Jana, you came in right on time.
Oh.
We are ready for you.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Would you like to start with the interim financials, kind of the estimated financials, or do you want to do RFPs first?
The first thing we have is estimated expenditures and revenues for 2020, for fiscal year 21. So why don't we start with that?
Okay, great. So thanks for having me. We tried to prepare some information for you. Everyone always loves, wants to know where you're going to end up at the end of the year. So
Oh, it is. Sorry, I turned it off because we're getting some feedback.
Oh,
We just shut it off. We just shut it off because of feedback.
Yeah, my fault, Tim.
Okay, sorry about
Take
that.
the blame again.
Can you hear me now? So anyways, the unexpended fund balance is actually a combination of many different factors. One of the factors is appropriations that were voted that are unexpended. But there are also other components of that, such as revenues that you get in that are unanticipated at the time you budgeted the year before, certain audit adjustments that are made by the auditors when they come in to do the financial statements. Sometimes there are different adjustments that they make relative to like the food service fund and moving it into the general fund. So I just want to make it clear that the numbers that you see here are not likely to be the numbers you see on that MS 25 form that you see in the fall. But just to give you a sense of kind of where we're coming in those different areas, okay? So the first thing is our general fund estimated expenditures remaining. I kind of gave you a report similar to what you've seen in your financials to give you an idea. It's our best estimated expenditures, and it takes into consideration things such as projects that are ongoing, some things that we have several building projects. Typically in summer schools, that's our go time. So I can't always tell you at this point exactly where they'll wind up because some of them are just starting now that students have left. But it kind of takes those factors in. You'll see in the report when you look at the table that the primary amounts that are left of our unexpended appropriated budget as of June 8th are in those areas of salaries and benefits, and that will come as no surprise to the board. We've talked about this all year long, how we've had some difficulty filling positions, but in addition to that, unfortunately, there were some programs that we weren't able to run, co-curriculars, certain coaching positions. So those salaries still remain in our budget because we had planned on them, but we weren't able to expend. The other factor, the elephant in the room, is COVID-19. So we had additional positions that we had to do to meet student needs that weren't budgeted. But we also had additional expenditures for supplies and equipment and things that were unanticipated. We're happy to say that we have been able to leverage funding to offset a lot of those and defray a lot of those costs. So that's been a great benefit to the bottom line, because had we not been able to leverage those funds, we'd be looking at a very different picture. And again, keep in mind, the year isn't done. As of when I wrote this on June 8th, we had 2 days before, we had been informed that FEMA had actually opened up to schools again. And those of you who are here in the fall, you remember me coming up and saying I'd had this whole claim, I'd worked with a FEMA person to put through, and at the 11th hour, they said that schools were not eligible for that. So they have new guidance. They've said that we are. We're working on compiling that claim. At the time that I wrote this, I was estimating that I thought it might be in the neighborhood of $25,000 that we could recoup. I think it's actually going to be a little bit higher than that. But I need to work with our liaison at the state to really nail that number down for you. But again, those revenues would come back into the fund. They would increase our revenues, so it would increase our fund balance. And that's not going to be reflected here because we're still working those levers right now. So there are 2 other components that I wanted to mention for the new board members that weren't here last July. Every July, we bring forward a list of open purchase orders to the board to say these are purchase orders that are for ongoing expenditures. For whatever reason, we haven't been able to finish them. So we would like to encumber the funds associated with them from 21 into the next year. Last year, you voted, I think it was $368,000 of ongoing things. Of those amounts, there were $162,000 roughly that came in under budget, or that we didn't wind up spending, because as I mentioned, a lot of the things we do in the summer are construction-based. So sometimes we don't always know. So even though you voted to bring that money into the fiscal year 21, we cannot expend that by law for any other purposes than what you voted. So as part of what will be going back, you'll be seeing some of those funds go back that aren't really related to appropriated funds that for this year that we had available, but they're actually related to the vote to carry into the next year. And similar to that, Back in 2019, the voters voted on warrant article number 5, to allow the school district to have access to $531,000 of interest from the bond fund to work on certain projects. Well, and then COVID hit. So some of those projects, and the board, again, you will be familiar with this because we've talked about it, part of that money was earmarked for furniture to spin up in the new building. Well, the first thing we had to do was pull furniture out of classrooms and store it. So we never really got to use our spaces the way we wanted to figure out, we couldn't purchase the furniture we wanted. So some of those monies were voted this year to put them into a capital reserve so that we can carry them forward and actually get that furniture. There were some other projects that had initially been budgeted or they anticipated they were going to cost a certain amount of money. And due to some project scope management that we've done and having a new facility director on board, we've been able to achieve those goals for less money. So again, that money was voted by this board for certain purposes. If we aren't going to be able to expend it for that certain purpose, that also would go back to the voters. So I'm anticipating that that will not be fully expended and that part of our remaining balance will be composed of that. So I'll take a break there and take questions on the expenditure side from anybody, because I know I just threw a lot at you. The table on the 4th page is the one that kind of talks about the expenditures by category. Any questions? All right. Well, moving right along, everybody's favorite, which is revenues. So just as with our expenditures, we estimate what we feel we're going to take in over the course of the year in revenues coming from various sources, federal, state, and local. We estimate a year in advance. Sometimes we come right in right on the money, sometimes we don't. But the nice part about the federal funds, at least, is that you receive the revenues as a reimbursement for expenditures. So it always nets out to zero. However much you take in, that's what you've expended. So in our general fund this year, which is not the federal funds, we've received pretty much all of our anticipated revenues. Some outstanding revenues that will be coming, and we don't have them yet, relate to Medicaid expenditure, revenues for students for the period March through June. We typically file a claim in late June, but don't receive those revenues until July. So that will increase our revenue budget. We also are still carrying in our bond fund, which is a separate fund, the rest of that accrued interest. And eventually, when we disband the bond fund, when the project is done and the committee has decided what they want to do with the remaining bond funds, that interest would go back into the general fund to be returned to the taxpayers, unless the taxpayers voted to do something different with it. But by law, that's another one of those things that just kind of will slush its way back in and be returned. The FEMA project I mentioned was pretty exciting. I was glad that happened. We actually are going to be receiving 100% reimbursement for eligible expenditures, which is an increase. I believe before they were only saying 60%. So this will be good. We've already started to compile, and as I said, I think it's going to be north of 25,000, but I will certainly apprise the board as soon as we have a real number to carry forward. Another component of our revenues is the E-rate revenue. Many of you are familiar with that program. It's run through USAC, which is a government organization to benefit libraries and schools and provide infrastructure, technology, connectivity, especially for rural school districts. So the way that the program works is you propose your project, they approve it, you have to expend your funds exactly as you suggested, and then you receive the revenues in on the back end. So we have been notified, I haven't gotten it yet, but we have been notified that there are some E-rate revenues coming in that correspond to 2019-20, and some of them were for infrastructure in Fund 30, which was our bond fund. Some were for general fund, but in all events, those come back in, and again, those just go back to the bottom line because we have already expended them. We don't expend them again. So that's kind of the revenue side of things. That's Okay, does anyone have any questions on the revenues before we go on to food service? All right.
So when you were talking about revenue, that's on page 5, correct?
Yes, it's the chart,
Okay.
the second part.
Can I ask you real quick, adequacy aid, what is that?
That is that's a very good question. It's a very complex formula, and I won't pretend to be an expert on it. It's calculated at the state level.
Okay.
It's composed of, they take our free and reduced hot lunch numbers, they take demographic information, they take they take educational information, they take averages, and they basically compile a number based on all of those things for each district in the state. And that is actually available on the Department of Education website. You can see the funding that goes to each district, but it's calculated individually.
So is it an unfair generalization to say that there's a $10,000 difference between what was budgeted and the fiscal activity, that's not less students?
No, yeah, it's basically, if you really want to know what impacted it the most this year, it's free and reduced hot lunch.
Okay.
Because parents have had free meals all year, and as a component of that calculation, they look at your percentages of approved, free, and reduced. People haven't filled out the forms because they haven't had the need. The incentive has sort of been removed because they are getting the free meals.
Can I make another shout out for people? Please do that.
Please
fill out.
Yeah.
Please fill out the form.
Great idea. I will put a shout out.
They that this year. They did not, they went on last year, free and reduced now.
So anyways, so if you have a chance to fill out those forms, they do help us a lot when we look ahead and we forecast, and they do help our numbers. The food service fund is technically, it's something called an enterprise fund. It is made up, the intent of the food service fund is that it's self-sustaining, meaning that the sales and the revenues you get in the food service fund offset the expenditures. As many of you know, most districts in the state do not operate in the black. It's just the costs of the food and the amount of the sales and the revenues typically don't offset. In a few cases they do, but a lot of cases they don't. So every year we budget some monies because we are required to take any deficit in that food service fund and bring it to zero every year. You can't run a negative. So we always budget a little bit of money. Last year, your interim business administrator was forecasting ahead and, in a wise move, looked at COVID and what was coming down the road and figured we may not, because we can't sell food, everything's free, we may have a deficit in those sales amounts. And the reimbursements we get from the USDA don't always cover all the margin. So he had increased last year. It was part of that encumbrance that you all voted to put a little bit extra aside. And based on that decision, it looks like we're in pretty good shape. That in conjunction with the supplemental public school fund, where we were able to recoup some of our food service management cost for that emergency service you approved to bring in the company. So as far as that goes, we're not expecting to have to do a large transfer into that fund, which is a really good thing. There are many districts of the state that are looking at a $200,000 and $300,000 loss. So we're in pretty good shape there. So I think that pretty much covers, it's a very high level, kind of a brief report. You'll be getting much more as we get towards the end of the year and as we kind of come in, but we wanted to give the board a sense of where you're at now so you get some idea. So any questions on that piece?
I think we can proceed to the fund balance if you'd like. And Jen, I just want to say one thing. I would just request that people don't call out while we're having the meeting. It's disruptive and out of order, so let's just keep that to a minimum. Go ahead, Jana.
So the retained fund balance, every year, I think it was back in 2014, the residents of Newmarket voted to approve to allow the school board to retain a percentage of the remaining fund balance. It's a formula as a contingency fund. That the same is true for towns. They get a different percentage, but at the time, the max that a school district could retain was 2.5%. So for several years, the Newmarket School Board has voted to retain 2.5% of our remaining fund balance to keep aside as a contingency. And there are a lot of restrictions surrounding that. It's not like the money just comes in and we can spend it any way we want. There's a process to go through. We would have to get state approval. But it does give the voters and the residents a little bit of assurance that if something really bad were to happen, that we at least have some fund balance available and don't have to go back and raise taxes.
And have we spent that, I know we didn't spend it last year, have we spent that at all in the last?
I do not believe you have. I think
Yeah.
since you started doing this, I think it's basically been set aside, and then every year we recalculate a new number.
And that money goes back to the
Yeah, the money goes
taxpayers,
back. Yeah, so.
to the tax rolls, great.
So the change this year, it's a little bit different. Back in September, the state changed the Chapter 198 district money, and I've attached that for you, to allow schools to retain more than the 2.5%. This is the first time that's happened. You can retain up to 5%, but you don't have to. You can pick any number that you want. In no case can you retain more than what you have left in your balance. So it's capped by that. So what I've done here is I've kind of showed you that last year, our 2.5% of the retained fund balance was $429,404. When you double that percentage, it goes up roughly by double. So the maximum, if you were to retain 5%, it would be $909,263. And again, this is dependent on how much we have left. So you never retain more than you had left. So what I'd like to do is ask the board if they would continue, if they'd like to continue to vote. You don't have to retain any. You can retain a certain percentage, a smaller percentage, or you can retain more. But what we do need to know is how much you want to retain, what percentage you want to retain, because that plays into the final number that we're able to return to the taxpayers based on our unrestricted fund balance at the end of the year.
Do you have a recommendation on possible expenses and what?
I think that given just what you pointed out, that you have not needed it, and frankly, we came through the most difficult year that in modern history, and we did okay. I think that you would probably be okay retaining in the neighborhood of what you have in the past. It's a great insurance policy. You know, I've heard of a district up north that they had a roof of their school that collapsed, and had they not had that contingency fund available to them, they would have had to go back to the voters in town to ask for money to fix their school, to operate their school. So that's kind of what the intent is.
Given that recommendation, that was sort of what I was leaning. I think that, given that that's been a historical precedent that we've had, and that if not spent, it goes back to the taxpayers
Exactly.
ultimately, I would say that would make some logical sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Any thoughts?
I agree, 100%.
Does that make sense? We need to vote on it, and then you will, once you get the numbers, Jana, let us know what that final number is.
Absolutely. You'll
Okay.
see that all comes back, and it's digging way back in the cobwebs of your memory, but when we present the MS-25, and
Right.
it shows you after the audit has come through exactly what's left, that piece comes off before you get to that bottom number. So you do see that.
Then I seek a motion to retain a fund, in fiscal year '21, retain a fund balance of 2.5% of the net assessment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr. Swanson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's approved unanimously.
Great, thank you very, very much.
Jana, do you want to talk about the RFPs and stuff?
Sure. I will talk about, if it's okay with you, I will talk about the computer lab
Yes.
one in front of you and give you what I know about that. But I have a much more qualified person to speak to the light dimming. And I commandeered him to come tonight. So I would be very delighted to pass the mic
We would
over
be
to
honored
Devin,
to
who's a
have that
master
happen.
electrician and can probably answer everything you wanted to know and many things you don't about
Perfect.
the lighting. So The computer lab, as you know, we build into our equipment replacement cycle every year to replace computers, desks, and different things. We have different replacement cycles. So this year, our computer lab was due to have a refresh. With the unit, the laptops in there needed to be replaced. So Mr. Kerry, your technology director, Jason, met with the building principal, the new, our business teacher, and we have a new computer science teacher coming on, and his technician to discuss like the needs of what we have. Because if we're gonna buy computers, we wanna make sure that they can support any instructional program we got coming down the road for the next 4 years. And as I think it was a couple meetings ago, Dr. Givens mentioned some of the exciting extracurriculars we have, which include CAD, computer-aided design, and there's a lot of really interesting co-curricular things that require kind of upgraded hardware. So the decision was made. They looked at all different kinds, and they got in several different bids. But what was decided after discussing was that they thought they didn't need a 17-inch laptop. They thought the 15.6 was good, but they wanted to make sure that it had on it all of the equipment and all of the programming that would be needed to support our instructional goals. So the recommendation that they came up with was to accept the bid, and I hope I pronounce it right, offers in the amount of $51,130. That includes adapters, monitors, keyboards, mouse, carts to store them in, and the devices themselves. And I will do my best to answer any questions you have about the technical pieces.
Gianna, why is there such a large varying cost?
That's a
Offers
great
is one cost, and then the other ones, I see some are incomplete bids, but
Right.
there's some other ones.
That's
Just
a great,
educate me.
yeah, that's a great question. It has to do with what I was mentioning as far as what they offered on the device. Obviously, when you buy a computer with more memory, you're able to do more things. And for the CAD and for those really intensive graphic programs, they felt that this model that this company put forward was the best fit to support our instructional model.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions about this one? Then why don't we listen to the second one, I think we can vote on both
Okay.
simultaneously.
Great. I will pass it over to your facilities director, Devin Lockley, and he can kind of explain to you the process that we went through on this. This is the dimming lighting project for the junior, senior high, and we've talked about it a couple times, but he can be much more eloquent.
Thank you for coming, Devin.
Thank you. So you see the bids in front of you for different pieces of the dimming controls. I was asked to try to put this RFP together, so I reached out and went back to the submittals for the building school and went into the plans, looked at all the lighting. And the submittals that went in there and found the original engineering design company that set that up for the school. Reached out to the the engineer, told them what what we were looking for, what we were trying to do to confirm that the fixtures that are existing in the junior senior high school are dimmable, which they are. We confirmed that in the field. Asked to have the RFP written so that there was only a few rooms that were already dimmed. We wanted to stay for apples to apples and have the same package go together. So great engineering, put together the package. It was a very long, drawn-out RFP. I don't know if you saw that or not, but it's not a lot of detail. Put it out to bid. We went to the original company that did the elementary school, Longchamp Electric, who did the dimming package. They did not respond. I reached out to them personally. They didn't want to bid on this. So I had the existing company, Martineau Electric, who is in Dover. They've done work. They have a PM in line with the school district now. They requested the bid. And then another company came in, and they were going to use a hybrid model, and they wanted to be able to put in their own fixtures and change out a lot of other components. At the end of the day, when we put that together, it wasn't what the engineer designed. So the other company, Negum Electric, who came in at the lower bids, was not the same design as what we had asked for. They had done a hybrid. and it wouldn't have been a compatible, it wouldn't have been a one-to-one. So the one from Martineau was the one, and we reached back to the engineer to confirm this. The engineer went back, reread everybody's submittals for the proposals, and said that Martineau was the one that actually hit all the targets to be able to make this work for what we asked. So the recommendation was to use Martineau, even though the number is large.
Any questions?
And is this work that was planned during the upgrade and just couldn't be included in the cost for the building, or I believe that?
I should have mentioned this before I sat down, I'm sorry.
No,
This is
I-
part of that 415,531,
Oh, okay.
the warrant article. This
Oh,
is a
okay.
project
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we
yeah.
had
Thank
earmarked
you.
with
Yep.
that. So this is not coming from our general budget,
Okay.
this is coming
Thank
from
you.
that. Sorry.
Translated, translated, it's the bond interest money that was voted last year at town meeting. It's
Yep.
paying for this.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I think we can proceed. I seek a motion to accept the bid of Ockers from Brockton, Mass. of $51,130 for the computer lab refresh, and from Martineau Electric in the amount of $173,200 for the lighting controls upgrade at the junior senior high school.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Swanson and a second from Ms. Durant. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Jana, Devin, thank you very much. Devin, both of you, one thing I wanted to say to both of you before you leave is that, you know, as we were talking about the fall plans, and I think about last year and how we got through this year, through the hard work of both of you, it's greatly appreciated. Jana ran down plexiglass like I've never seen anyone run down plexiglass before. And I sincerely appreciate it.
And
I
desks
appreciate all
and
the hard
and everything
work.
else?
Yeah.
Use desks in the U-Haul.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean,
That was a fun day.
you guys have done a yeoman's job, and I appreciate it very much, so.
Yeah, well, no, you know what, thank you, because we had the support to be able to do it. And some of those decisions, as you remember, were made very quickly or because they had to be. So we appreciated the board's support.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Devin,
much.
thank you for
Thank you.
coming. All right, the next thing is board governance policy review. Gary had sent me, I believe, 2 or 3 policies that he wanted to review pertaining to the role of the school board chair. And I looked at those and I said, and then I was looking at the entire school board governance section, and I thought it might be a good idea for us to do a full refresh of that. So my thought is that I seek a motion to refer that whole section to the policy committee for review to then come back with us.
What if we changed the retreat to do a review and then maybe a right to know, because I know Andrew hasn't had an opportunity to go through right to know training.
We'll see. I mean, because this is, the committee work would be the policy review as it's done before. So that would be separate and apart from the retreat.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that would be a different thing. It would be, you know, looking at, and I've actually seen some policies from different districts that pertaining to board governance that might serve us well here. So really looking at those with Andrew, Susan, and myself to see what the committee thinks and bringing it to the board for first and second read and approval. So can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr. Swanson to move the school board policy review to the policy committee. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have approved the opening plan. We don't have manifests, you guys just did them last week, correct?
Before we go past discussions, I just want to thank you for your statement. I guess what I was trying to ascertain about the difference between the third and the fourth is, other than, I guess what was the impetus, like what, we saw the weather report, you got emails, did we get anything like from the DOE or anything?
No.
It was just,
No, it wasn't. And the challenge, you know, if we go back to even the night of the third, had there been a discussion even on the second or the first saying, this is coming up, maybe we need to get with the unions and the parents before that, it might have been something that had been voted on the third, but we didn't do it that way. And then, I made my mistake. I should not have done that. And
We
so,
all make mistakes.
my goal was to get the mask thing changed and make the buildings cool. And I did something I shouldn't do, so I wanted to acknowledge it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I know also last meeting, I guess a survey went out. I wasn't aware of it. It went out during the meeting, so I was a little surprised to find out that a survey had gone out because of DPHS rule change. It's not
Yes, yes, yes.
DHHS, it's D.
It was the Department of Health and Human Services. They had suggested that day that schools be mask-free or mask optional moving forward.
Yeah, I
And
mean-
so, based upon the work that I'm assuming that the task force has done, but I didn't know because I wasn't on it.
Yeah.
It became a question of how do we address this new guideline? What are people comfortable with, as we talked about before?
No, it just would have been a great opportunity to maybe get some goodwill in the community by discussing it. But
Right.
it is what it is.
And I think, I hope that on some level, the fact that we really are striving to get input from people through surveys in a variety of ways, through the town halls like happened last night, through people serving on different task force and things. I hope that, that helps us as well. Because, I think, I don't know who said it tonight, but, all of us hopefully are sitting here to do what is best for the faculty, staff, and students and taxpayers of our town. And, we have to make tough decisions sometimes. We have to make decisions on the fly. But my assumption and my way of moving about it is that I'm giving you my best. I might fail, but I'm assuming that you're giving me the same and that that's what we're doing for the people. And I think if we all do that, we're good.
And I will work to learn how to use Zoom properly.
Hmm?
And I will work to learn how to use Zoom
Please,
properly.
please,
Because I clicked on
please.
that link like 6 times.
All right.
I felt so stupid when I realized what I did.
So we do not have the manifest because you guys just signed it. I don't see the minutes in this packet, but did people review them?
I emailed Patty, they were the minutes from the 3rd, instead of the 17th.
Okay, so we will address that on the 8th. We approved the RFPs, we set the fund balance. Now we get to talk about donations. The first one is Unified Champion Sports donation of $300. Susan, if you could touch on that, it'd be great.
Yeah, so this is really from the Special Olympics of New Hampshire, and the amount is $300, and we would like to thank them very much for, their generosity. And so that's the first one for $300. The next one is a group of parents raised some money and donated $475 so that we could provide a food truck on early release day to show appreciation to the staff for all that they have done to support the community this year. So that's a donation of $475. And the last one is a donation of $2,000 from Banwell. And this is to offset the cost of the plaques for the dedication that will take place in September. So those are the 3 donations that we received since the last board meeting.
I seek a motion to accept these 3 very generous donations.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr. Swanson to approve these generous donations. Thank you to all the people who donated. Banwell, thank you for the partnership in building the buildings and helping us with that, and I look forward to the day that the plaque is hung. I think the food truck was very well received, and I always like this. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone. The next thing is to authorize the superintendent to continue to enter into contracts with qualified staff on behalf of the district and waive related sections of policies GCF and GDF and provide the school board with a list of newly hired professional staff at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. And just so the newer members understand, oftentimes in the past, the board has taken the entire summer off. And obviously, things have to happen and teachers have to be hired. And so this allows Susan to act and hire qualified people without having to check in immediately with us, but she'll get us the updates at our next meeting. Any questions about that?
Is it fair, just July, basically, we're taking off for me. and
It's
first
really
week
just
of
one,
August.
it's really just one meeting, honestly.
Okay.
But it just makes it easier, because if it's an off week,
Oh, yeah, yeah, I just,
yeah.
yeah.
So I seek a motion to,
Well,
yep.
let's be clear, right? If you only want to do it to the next meeting and I have to hire in the interim, then I'll probably lose candidates as I did last year. Because they have to not be able to enter into a contract and offer a contract to somebody, then delays the process. And this
Yes.
time of year, it's pretty difficult, once you find, if you can find a qualified candidate, to secure them.
So why don't we, and you guys can see if you take this amendment, but authorize the superintendent to do those things and update us as she would at the regularly scheduled board meeting until September 30th, 2021. Is that amenable? Since that's the next one, that's when that ends?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll amend it to add until September 30th, 2021. I seek a motion to authorize this policy adjustment.
So make a motion.
We have a lot of people that want to do it. We will give it to Heather. Heather's made the motion with a second from Elizabeth.
I feel like we're at Family Feud.
Any more discussion?
I can hit it first.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The next one is to waive the school board $5,000 line item transfer approval requirement under policy DBJ until September 30th, 2021. And Susan, if you could just hit on that one again. I know what it is, but I'm not going to articulate it properly.
And so it's the same idea, that these three policies are things that allow us to continue to operate during the summer months, so that we can get the work done that's approved. Sometimes, as Jana mentioned, the contract might come in slightly above what we had initially anticipated a year ago when we put the budget together, and then we would be able to go ahead and move forward with that particular project, and then we would give you an update on the end. Any variances that were over $5,000 afterwards. So that's what that's about, and then the policy waivers, the same thing. So on your behalf, I would sign contracts that come in. So example, you made, you approved these bids
Right.
tonight, and so I would sign the contract on your behalf, moving forward. I don't know if, I'd have to ask Jana, she's not here now, if there are other things that they're going out to bid for construction-wise. I honestly
Right.
didn't ask her ahead of time.
I
She-
wonder if
she
we
put
should
these forward.
amend that one to September 30th as well, just so it's all consistent.
I agree.
All right, so let's vote to waive the $5,000 line item transfer approval policy DBJ and the bidding requirement under item 1E of policy DJE. I seek a motion to do those things.
This also coincides with the end of your first quarter, so then Jana would give you a quarterly report like she did last year, and then she listed anything that fell into these categories, so you had a summary of what took place that related to each item. I will give you an update, not quarterly, she would do that for the purchasing thing, but for staffing, as I have done in the past, each time we meet, if there's been action taken,
Right.
then I give you the updates at that time.
So we have a motion, but I don't believe we have a second.
I'll second.
A second from Mr. Hemaker. Any more discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move to the, yep. For both. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's approved. The next thing is that we have a student who, we need to waive policy JBB. So, as we have in the packet, Assistant Superintendent Deb Black has looked at the situation and determined that she suggests that we allow this student to enter early, quote unquote. And I seek a motion to waive policy JEB, the entrance age requirement for one student based on the reasons identified in the materials.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Swanson and a second from Mr. Rant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Susan, the next thing is the resignations.
So we had two late resignations that are before you tonight. So the administration, wants to publicly thank them. And this would be Oscar Nato Carvalho, who is our English as a second language teacher, and Jamie Hayes, athletic director, for their service to the school community, students, and colleagues. And we wish to support Oscar. He's moving to Michigan, and he's done an outstanding job over the last couple of years. Finding a replacement for him is not going to be easy, especially now, those positions, if you're going to get somebody. So we'll do the very best that we can to fill that void. As I mentioned at the last meeting, Jamie Hayes is not leaving us. He's just resigned as the athletic director for the upcoming school year, and we've, put together a interim plan that you approved at the last meeting, but we didn't have this on the agenda for accepting the resignations. So those are the two that are before you tonight.
Both of these people have been excellent members of the Newmarket community for some time, and I am grateful for both of their service. I had the pleasure of working with Oscar last summer on one of the task forces, and he was an excellent advocate for his students, and it was great to hear his perspective. So he will be missed, and Jamie Hayes, as athletic director, has done a yeoman's job as well, and I'm grateful for his service too. So I seek a motion to accept these resignations.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Swanson, a second from Ms. Durant. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then last, the confirmations. So we have hired 4 additional professional staff since we last met, not last week, but the time before, because this was not on the agenda. And I'm thrilled. I was looking for their nomination sheets, and they're up in my office, so I won't give you all the details on them, but I will share a few remarks. So Adam Durkee, we have issued a contract and received a contract signed back from him for the position of health and PE teacher at the junior senior high school. He comes to us with 12 years of experience from Somersworth. He spent his entire teaching career in Somersworth, and we're really, really excited to have him join us. He's done work there to redesign and implement a new health and wellness curriculum there. He's a coach. He's been student council advisor. He's been a very, very active member, which is what you want in a small school. You wear many hats, if you're going to offer a whole complement of different co-curricular activities, then you need staff that are able, willing, and have an interest in advising and or coaching. So we're really excited to have him join us. Rebecca Cole will be our new library media specialist at the junior senior high, and we are really excited to have her joining us. She was an English teacher, high school English teacher for many years, and she took a little break. And she found, she has a passion for literacy and reading. And she had worked very closely with a team of teachers and the librarian in her school district. And I think it was Exeter, but I'm trying to go off the top of my head. I think she taught in Exeter. And they developed a lot of really engaging learning experiences for kids. And she also likes working with staff to help, enhance learning experiences, by providing media and resources and researching for them different ways that they can have students access learning. So she found her passion in the library media area, and she went back and she got a degree, and she just recently graduated with a degree as a library media specialist. So she is very excited to be joining us, and we're super thrilled to have her. Her vision is consistent with the vision that we would have for a modern library, which is more like a learning commons, that libraries aren't meant to be quiet places where people just find books, that they find resources available to them. And she had talked about being able to have different rooms and collaboration tables where students could come, when they're working on a project and be able with their, throw up information and, work very collaboratively. She talked about green rooms and being able to have, spaces. We have different rooms inside the library that she could design into different spaces for kids. One being a quiet space for those kids that are overly stimulated, where they could have some quiet time to be able to relax. And so taking the library and making it into, kind of the hub of the high school. So those are all concepts of the 21st century modern library media center, and we're super excited to have her joining us this year. Fourth grade teacher Madeline DeRocha joined us this last year. She actually joined us as a right out of college to be a tutor, a math tutor. And then, of course, we were madly recruiting teachers when we knew we had to add additional teachers. And so she taught in the third grade this year. And through the review process, I observed her classroom myself several times this year. And she was very student-centered, student choice, up and had kids working on projects, different ways that they could present their learning. And I was very pleased to see a teacher with no experience, come in and be offering, the level of choice that she was to her students. So we're pleased to have her join us as a permanent member of our faculty next year in the fourth grade. That was a new position that we had added this year. And then Caitlin Zabilski, I don't recall as much information about her. I know that she's a new teacher, and I don't recall where she's joining us from, but she had a very engaging personality and a real passion for working with kids that had, unique needs. And she talked a lot about, how she came to wanting to work with this population when she was in high school, Best Buddies programs and other ways that she found, that she had a real patience and passion for working with kids that might struggle in some areas. And so through her experience in high school, she found her desire to pursue a degree in special education, and we have her joining us at the elementary school. So those are key positions. We do have 2 applicants for the Mandarin teacher. We're gonna, I know, it doesn't mean we'll hire one, but we'll at least be interviewing them this week. And we put the ad out for that administrative assistant to the principal, which is another, the combination of ELO and athletic director, and to help us with our NEASC. So we put that ad out there. I'll change this up for the next time. And we have not received any applications for ESOL. So that's the update.
Have you received any applicants for that position that we voted on last?
I didn't have time this week to.
Oh.
We ran it on Friday. Patty put it up, but I haven't had a moment
What
to
were
stop
you
and
doing
ask.
this week?
I know, nothing at all. Nothing at all. So I don't have an update on that. I don't know. I didn't touch base with her before the meeting on that.
Anything else? Do we confirm these?
Yes.
I couldn't remember, so we will go ahead. I seek a motion to confirm these nominations.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Swanson and a second from Ms. McKinney. Any questions or thoughts? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, just a couple things. Our next meeting is July the 8th. Then after that, we will have our school board retreat on August 5th. Depending on the board's pleasure and based upon the conversation we had about the reopening plan, we might need to schedule a brief meeting another night that week to get that information out to the public. So that'll be on there. And then our next meeting after that is August 19th. I seek a motion at 7 10.
Couple of items, if you don't mind. 3. One, someone mentioned it tonight, and someone mentioned it another time. The 5 p.m. time, I personally love meeting at 5 p.m., but I understand it may cause difficulties for some families. Do we used to meet pre-COVID later?
We did, and we can talk about it, but we'll put that on the agenda later on.
That would be
And then-
reviewed with the
Yeah.
governance policies.
I know, Susan, did you have a chance to find out about the 603 Brighter Futures survey, DOE?
We have not had a chance to catch up on any emails, but.
I do know,
I
Gary,
will.
and I did hear that question, I didn't think about it. I do know that oftentimes surveys of that nature have solely gone out to families with children with IEPs.
Yeah, they revised it.
And then I think that given the COVID situation, they revised it. But I think, it came in that same format in the past. So I think it is.
Quite a few towns have done it. I guess it was on the school leaders meeting with the deputy commissioner on the 7th.
Okay.
I think he's doing it 30.
Eventually I'll get caught up and
We'll get
one
that.
step at a time.
And then lastly, just point of word, do we want to accept the petition that was handed to us?
I mean, I think that since we approved the policy that masks are optional, and the board can tell me what their pleasure is, I think we've addressed the issue that the petition was requesting. All right, it is now 7:12, and I seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. McKinney, a second Mr. Swanson. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience with me. I didn't have to stand one, so I'm proud of myself.